All right. Well, a pleasant night, first and foremost, to each and every one of you guys. I am Christ, I am Disciple. And we're going to talk a little bit about Superman and seeing the world from Superman's perspective. The reason is we generally, any outstanding person in the world, any person who is seen as someone who is exceptional, while people like to identify with that person, it's only one aspect of that person that people want to identify with. They want to identify with someone's abilities, their extraordinary abilities. We usually like success and we like to identify with success. So, generally speaking, we like to identify with the success of a person, not necessarily do we identify with that person, the completeness of that person. Why I say that is because what is deified as gods in our world today, common GODS, that is the people who we see as our heroes, we see them as heroes for the fact that they can inspire us and motivate us, but really we identify not with their entire life, not with the entire person. We identify with the successful part of the person, the part of the person that seems larger than life, and the performance of that person. Take for instance, if you look at Usain Bolt, who broke all kinds of records and stuff, I identified with him because I identified with the fact that he was blowing my mind, that he's running so fast, and I was thinking I could run fast too, and I felt inspired, and so everybody starts to identify with the success that he's had, not necessarily with him as a person, because right now Usain Bolt, nobody cares about him, nobody's talking about him. You know what I mean? They know he's a great person, but nobody's talking about him. Why? Because he's no longer in front of the public eye doing the exceptional things he was doing. He's like a superhero, but usually the word of mouth on these people is always greater than the person themselves. And we don't always look at people as individuals and as people. Now, let's get into therefore Superman. Superman is an iconic mythical figure, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on comic books as modern myths. But first, I always begin with a piece of scripture. So we're going to get into the piece of scripture really quickly right now. The scripture comes from the book of Acts. And the book of Acts, chapter 28, it talks about Paul on the island of Malta. I'll read. Once we were safe on shore, we learned that we were on an island of Malta. Okay, first of all, this person is talking about we. Let me tell you who is actually talking about this, because this is a secondhand account. This is not Paul himself talking. This is not from Paul's perspective. This is from somebody who was there as a witness describing what has happened with Paul. So this is very important to understand, because always you must ask yourself a question when you're watching any kind of story. Who is the narrator of the story? Who are we hearing the story from? Who is this person? Who is the person? What perspective are we getting the story from? Are we getting this perspective from somebody who witnessed what happened? Are we getting the perspective from the actual person themselves? Are we getting this perspective from somebody who was never there, but what this mythical story was handed down to them? So that's something that you must always think about when you are watching any kind of story, whether it's a documentary, whether it's entertainment, film, whatever. Think whose story is being told. All right? Think about what I'm saying. Okay, but anyway, back to what we were saying here. This is the book of Acts. The person who's talking here, hold on a second, let me just. This is an account from one of the people who was with Paul. Okay, I believe it's not Timothy. It could be Timothy, okay? I was trying to find the account, but I couldn't find it. All right, so anyway, let's read the story, because once again, this is storytelling. I'm telling you a story that I never witnessed. I wasn't there, okay? This is an account from someone who was there, and I am just simply relaying that account to you. It goes like this. Once we were safe on shore, we learned that we were on the island of Malta. There was a big storm, all of that, and that's the precursor to the story. Ship crashed. They got safely to shore, however, even though the ship sank. And then they were on the island of Malta. You can go and find out where Malta is. It's somewhere, Eastern Europe, in between Eastern Europe and the Middle East. The people of the island were very kind to us. It was cold and rainy. So they built a fire on the shore to welcome us and to warm us. As Paul gathered an armful of sticks and was laying them on the fire, a poisonous snake, driven out by the heat of the fire, fastened itself onto his arm. It bit it. The people of the island saw it hanging there and said to each other, "Paul is a murderer, no doubt. Though he escaped the sea, justice will not permit him to live." But Paul shook off the snake into the fire and was unharmed. The people waited for him to swell up and then suddenly drop dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no harm had come to him, they changed their minds and decided he was a god. And I'll stop right there. So, what you realize about human nature is we tend to praise things that we deem, our perception again, we deem positive. And we tend to curse things which we deem, again, our perception, negative. So what happened with Superman, particularly Zack Snyder's Superman, is that people have their perception of Superman. I will on YouTube put up a video about a minute long that goes into this in a very simple way, okay? But what I'm saying to you, and I already put up one on Twitter. I didn't put up any on Facebook. I didn't put up any on YouTube yet. And I do have a, what do I have? I have a TikTok account. I'm gonna start putting up these short videos on TikTok as well. I may put it up on WhatsApp as well, but I don't really have a WhatsApp group. If we had a WhatsApp group, I would do that. Okay, so anyway, and there's also Twitch and there's all these other things, but okay, so anyway, back to what we were saying. So ultimately, Zack Snyder did, especially with Man of Steel, Zack Snyder tried to give insight into Superman as a person. Meaning, how they decided to tell the story of Superman was from his perspective, what he went through. Because usually, the myth of a person really supersedes that actual person's life. Take, for example, and this is what happens for us in our society. We tend to, what's the word I'm looking for? We tend to, the word I'm looking for, it's there, but I can't find it right now. We tend to over amplify the heroism of our heroes. In today's society, our superheroes are the following. Our superheroes are the exceptional athletes in our world. In fact, sports is almost worshipped. We have a certain reverence for those who are exceptional in the sporting world. We also have, as our superheroes in the world today, those who we esteem very highly in society. They are generally the leaders of society in some way, shape, or form. They may be Hollywood superstars, they may be leaders, or they may be exceptional musicians, etc. All right, in entertainment. So the stars of today, what we call the superstars of today, are our superheroes of today, especially for the younger people who are more influential and so on, influenced very easily. Now, the thing about it is that the hype around these people generally is greater than the people themselves. We don't care to know these people as people. We care to know them as these hyped up images that are portrayed to us. Okay? And that's how we perceive them. If I say right now Elton John, well, some of y'all don't know who Elton John is. Let me try somebody who's more contemporary. A more contemporary figure would be somebody like, oh yes, she's very popular right now, Taylor Swift. If I say Taylor Swift to you guys, right? Immediately an image will come to a lot of you guys' eyes because Taylor Swift is like the bomb right now. If I say Beyonce Knowles, everybody goes nuts, right? But do you really know who Beyonce Knowles is? Do you really know who Taylor Swift is? No, you don't. You know the persona, the image that is portrayed of these people, right? And A lot of you would say, well, Beyonce knows, man, I wish I was Beyonce knows. I wish I had what she had. I wish I lived the life she lived. I wish I was Taylor Smith. I wish I lived the life she lived, right? I wish I was Usain Bolt. I wish I could run that fast, blah, 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 right? We always like to say that because we like to look at the achievements, the success, right? And the image that's portrayed of these people, which is larger than life. It's hyped up, larger than life. I wish I was Floyd Mayweather. I wish I was this. I wish I was that. We always wish we was, right? Okay. These are all superheroes. Or at least not mine necessarily, but a lot of people in the world superheroes, right? They're called superstars. Now, why I say that is because that same mentality is what I see with people perceiving Superman, okay? Superman is taken almost to the nth degree because a lot of people would love to be Superman, but they do not understand Superman, the person. I want you to understand what I'm saying because this is an important point. And so what Zach did was he humanized Superman. Now, a lot of people, I was even on Twitter today, spend a lot of time on Twitter, speaking with different people and also pointing out, you know, the different burner accounts. There's so many burner accounts on Twitter. A lot of burner accounts, man. They people who making multiple accounts of themselves, and we got, you know, sometimes you bounce up a butt or two, but burner accounts mostly are what I'm seeing. For people who disagree with what Zack Snyder did with Superman, David Goyer, Zack Snyder, and Christopher Nolan, they do not get it. And so that's because they're caught up in the hype. They're caught up in the persona of Superman. Okay? So this is why I said I'm going to talk a little bit about Superman's perspective, which a lot of people can't imagine or think about because Superman seems so detached from them, like he's so perfect. But in fact, Superman is not flawed in terms of his morale, but he is much more human than people will give credit for. And I'll explain what I mean. So, I wanted to talk about this at length somewhat to you guys because I felt like today I should talk about this. The first thing I want to say is when we looked at the scripture there just a minute ago with Paul, people were in absolutes. So it was either Paul was a murderer, he was a wicked man, he was a wicked person, or Paul was a god. Right? And you know, it's interesting because in BVS, that was a similar discussion that was happening with Superman, right? Is he a devil or is he a god, right? Those are these absolute extremes. And even in the fandom, in the Superman fandom or in any fandom for that matter, you have people on those extremes again. Superman's a god. Now they say he's not a god. These people who actually worship Superman and they don't realize it, they will say this. They will say Superman is not a god. He's a human. You know, Zach tried to make him an alien, but he's a human like you and I. But he's grown up with great value. So he's not going to doubt himself. He's not going to question himself, which is ridiculous. How can he be not a god? He's human, but he doesn't question himself. Which human do you know that doesn't question things? That doesn't doubt at some point? So they're continuously disagreeing with themselves, and they don't realize it, right? Because they have an image of Superman in their head, their perception of Superman as this all-powerful, perfect individual, basically a god, okay? They don't realize that's what they're doing, and they don't realize they're worshiping Superman. And that's because they're so detached from him. They don't realize that. So a lot of people go around saying Superman needs to be this or that or the other. They have this golden image of Superman in their head, but they don't really know Superman. What they know is the image portrayal of Superman. They know the iconography of Superman, like Beyonce knows, like Taylor Swift. We know the grandiose part of them, But we don't know Taylor Swift. We don't know Beyonce Knowles. We don't know them like that. We know what they portray to us. And what Zack Snyder was doing was he's breaking that down and showing, well, this is what Superman thinks. This is where Superman's at. This is what Superman has to deal with. This is Superman's world. And so he brought that to the table. Now, guys like Geoff Johns will say, no, it's great to be a superhero. Superheroes, have great lives. They have fantastic lives. They should be happy. But that's like saying rich people and people with money, they should be happy. They have fantastic lives. They have everything they need. But what Zack tapped into was the psychological and the emotional needs that everyone who is called a human being or a person needs. And that's the thing that Geoff Johns misses. That's the thing that the fans miss. Superman, if you are arguing that Superman is human, then you should argue that the needs that human beings need, he needs also. Correct? If I'm wrong here, stop me. Because how can you be a human and not have feelings and emotions? How can you be a human being and not want somebody to identify with you? Not want the comfort of somebody loving you, not want to be heard, not want to be accepted. These are human traits. This is something that's universal all over the world. Humanity's like that. No matter if you're autistic or not. You might not know how to convey your emotions and feelings, but you do need these things and you do want these things, right? So if you're saying that Superman is human, he's not a god, he's human. He came from a good home, but he's human. Then you have to now, because Superman's not human, but I get what they mean. They mean human in terms of how he was raised, socialized, and therefore, like all human beings, he interacts with humans more like how a human does. He doesn't know how Kryptonians interact with Kryptonians, so he doesn't know about that. So, Superman, therefore, is human. Let's go from that perspective, because that's what Zack Snyder was doing. What makes Superman relatable is his journey, is his thought process, how he reacts to the world, and how he is even treated in the world. Because in reality, whereas you not being a hero or you not being that prominent star, you do not understand what's involved in being at that level, in being where the world's attention is upon you all the time. One, it's hard to get privacy. Two, you're not going to see the people who hate you, who are jealous of you, who would kill you, who would kidnap you. People don't realize that that sort of fame, that sort of impact, yes, it's a lot to create great influence, but at the same time, there are crazy people out there. And you'll be able, from that perspective, from the perspective of a superstar, from the perspective of a superhero, you're going to see those people coming at you. You're going to see the people who don't like you. They're jealous of you. And they're going to say mean things about you. We don't think about that. We don't think Taylor Swift gets all these mean letters from people at times. We think Taylor Swift's universally loved. But from her lens, she knows what really goes on in her world. Beyonce knows what really goes on in her world. And there's certain protections and certain things put in place to protect these people. And their lives are not hunky-dory and all gay. They're human beings just like you. They have depression just like you. They go through their hard times. They have to take care of the kids. They have family to deal with. There's relationship interactions with family that people don't know about. Just because you got a little money, just because people know your name, doesn't mean you're not a human being, right? Same thing with Superman. Let's think about it, right? Let's be rational about it. Let's put reasoning into it. Superman's just a human. Well, okay, he's human just like you and I. He's not human. He's an alien, really. But he's been socialized as a human. So he behaves just like how we would behave. He'd react to things just like how we would react to things. And so, therefore, he has to have a certain measure of discipline, a certain measure of control. Otherwise, he would naturally do, as we learned in Man of Steel. He wanted to hit that boy so hard, but he couldn't because he knew what could happen as a result of him hitting the boy. Right? If Superman can't save everybody. That's the question. Superman can't save everybody. So we see the things now from Superman's lens. Because when we've been seeing it from our lens, we think Superman can save everybody. He can save everyone, everywhere. Let's think about that now. What did Man of Steel show us? Superman's senses, when they got enhanced, it almost drove him insane. It almost killed him, right? He had to learn to focus. And by focusing, he could actually be effective in helping people, which means if you focus in on something, you tune out a lot of other things. So Superman had to learn how to focus in, and he started by focusing in on his mother. He started focusing in on people where he saw the need, but he would tune out a lot of other things. One of the things that Zack Snyder said about Superman when he was supposedly going to save Lois is they said Superman would pick up all kinds of other things and other crimes and other places happening, but he would zone in and focus in on what it is he needed to focus in on. Otherwise, it would distract him. And you have to understand something, right? And this is a lesson for you. This is not just about Superman, because like we said, Superman's human, right? He's supposedly human, or he experiences the human experience, right? So therefore, if that applies to Superman, it applies to you and I as well. We have to learn to focus in on what we're doing in life. Sometimes it's not expedient to try and help everybody. You're pulling your hand here. You'll tear yourself apart. You have to focus in on what matters the most and try and help people and systematically try to help other people. Because sometimes in trying to just help people randomly, you're not doing anything. You're not helping anyone. So it's better to be a little bit systematic and very purposeful on what you're doing. And I thought this was a great life lesson that, this little Clark Kent learned how to focus. That by having these extraordinary experiences and extraordinary abilities, all of a sudden in his puberty, he was able to learn how to focus that in. And he talked about it to General Zod as well. And General Zod learned how to focus rather quickly too. So the point I'm making is, from Superman's perspective, we started to get insight into Superman, what he could do, why he did what he did. We got to understand him. Now, one of the things about Man of Steel that is beautiful is, Zack Snyder sometimes talks about deconstruction of heroes, but I prefer to say demythicizing heroes. What I mean by that is, a myth is a series of stories passed down from one generation to the next. And sometimes in the passing down of information, if you're not careful, people will start to exaggerate certain things. And the stories get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We see it in sports all the time. If you're comparing somebody from today's world with someone from the past, they usually try to, take for instance Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan could do no wrong. You see clips of him, highlight reels and stuff. Most people will tell you Michael Jordan's a better basketball player than LeBron James. But guess what? When we started to go into the hardcore facts, we began to realize certain things that LeBron James did that Michael Jordan just didn't do. LeBron James was on 3 different teams: Los Angeles Lakers, Miami Heat, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Guess what? He got NBA final rings for all 3 teams. Something Michael Jordan never did in his lifetime. Never. Not once. Think about what I'm saying. So, yes, the myth of Michael Jordan is tremendous. And people imagine Michael Jordan as almost unbeatable. But he's lost a lot of games. He actually has. In reality, the myth is bigger than the man. And I think Zack Snyder's going to play on that with Rebel Moon. But the idea is that a myth is based on an idea, and ideas are powerful. You've heard people say this many times with many different things. Ideas are powerful, and ideas don't necessarily have to die. It depends, you know. So anyway, back to what I am saying. I am saying, therefore, just as in sports with Michael Jordan and LeBron James, and just the further away you go in time from a person is the more glowing they look, because people hype them up so much, unless you can see the actual footage of them or you were there at the time. And then it depends, even when you're there at the time, different people have different accounts. They have, you know, different people are what is the word I'm looking for? Impressed differently by different things. You know, it depends on your experiences. So there's a way how somebody, that's why I said perception, how you tell a story. If it's not your story, if it's secondhand, if it's third hand, etc., 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 that blows the myth bigger or smaller, depending. All right. The actual thing is different to the mythos. And this is what people need to know. Yes, mythos is based in truth, but mythos is an exaggeration of the truth at all times. So I don't always think of Zack as deconstructing the heroes. I think of Zack as deconstructing the myth and trying to bring the truth to it. And by him personalizing Superman and doing things from Superman's lens, we are able to see Superman as a person, as an individual, as someone like us. And I think that's the key thing that is different about Man of Steel, BVS, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, because yes, we start to see now things from Batman's lens in BVS and from different people's lens in BVS, but we also see from Superman's lens how he sees things, right? So BVS is a little bit more complex in that we have multiple lead characters and we are seeing things from multiple different people's points of view. Nonetheless, Superman is the focus of BVS. And yes, we also see the world's point of view of how the world sees Superman in BVS. But suffice it to say that as controversial as Superman seems to be in BVS, I must say the majority of people still see him as a hero, or, you know, like in sports, like a god. Why? Because he's constantly doing good throughout BVS. All Superman's been doing it throughout BVS is good. He's helping people. He's helping flood victims. He's helping the girl from the burning building. He's helping the people on the ship. He's helping the Russian rocket that went up into space. He saved the people's lives there. He's constantly helping people throughout the movie. He saves Lex Luthor, saves Lois Lane. He saves Batman and Wonder Woman from Doomsday, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Superman's constantly helping people. So yes, obviously, regardless of the few people who in BVS were very vocal in the media picking up on it, and people talking about burning him and all of that, you saw the firemen, you saw the first responders, you saw, because Superman also is a first responder. We see Superman as a first responder for the flooding that happened with the people on top of the house roofs. He's the first guy to get there, right? He will work together with humanity and the rescue crews to navigate them in so they could save the people, and he pick up some of the people himself and carry them back at the same time. So Superman really, even in that world, even in BVS world, was a positive influence on people constantly. So a lot more people saw him as a hero and saw him as a good person and saw him as a god, sort of godlike figure, because he could help them, than, you know, the people who generally were didn't see him as that, right? Those people were fewer in number, significantly, which is why many people were appalled and made news that somebody had defaced the Superman statue in Metropolis. They didn't erected a statue to him and all that. That told you that they, you know, most people understood and appreciated of Superman. So the point I'm making is that even in that world, and even in the world we live in now, most people are appreciative of Superman, but they don't necessarily know who he is. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because Superman just appear. What is Superman? Superman appears out of nowhere and saves the day, right? He just comes out of nowhere, whoosh, swoops in, saves the day. We talk with people for a minute or so, smile with them, maybe get some pictures taken, and he sweeps off, right? They don't know where he comes from. They don't know where he goes to. He just gonna. That's what Superman is, right? He'll solve a crime, save the day, Adventures of Superman, that kind of thing. That's what Superman was. Superman's always been that way. What we got is this, right? We got, when it comes to Superman, I think, at least, we got with Superman in 1978, and then we had also George Reeves' Superman from TV. Superman would always teach morals and lessons, right? He have a beautiful adventure from Clark Kent, go save the day, whatever. And then he comes back and he has a point, he gets a lesson, and then he fly off again, up and away, all right? He's gone again. And Clark Kent was like the civilian part of him. Nobody really didn't know the civilian part of Superman. We know the civilian part of Superman, but the world he lives in, Metropolis, doesn't know that. So for them, he just appears out of nowhere. He's there to save the day. He rescues people when they need the rescuing, or animals or whatever. He's there to save the day. That's Superman. So when you think about it, and he's generally upbeat, very optimistic, very hopeful. Generally, that's Superman, right? And Henry Cavill's Superman is the same thing. But we get to see a closer look at it. We get to see the years when he wasn't wearing the cape. We get to see the years. Now, they changed up the story a little bit to more John Byrne story, in that his mother made the cape before, but this time he actually, the ship makes the outfit for him, right? So it's a little bit different. It's more of the John Byrne version of Superman than it is, because it's more, they want to more give his Kryptonian lineage more credit. But having said all of that, it's still the same Superman, right? When he's flying, he's happy. When he's saving people, he's happy. He's always smiling. He's always happy to lend a helping hand. You see him smile when he's rescuing the girl and bringing her back to her mom. He's smiling there. We see him smile when he's finally helped Lois Lane to protect her from stuff, and he says, "Welcome to the planet." Comes back to the planet. Most of the time, of course, he's busy trying to rescue people, so he's not going to be smiling while he's busy trying to rescue people. Okay, but by and large, people value him. They love him. They appreciate him, and they're happy that he's there to save the day for them, right? But what people forget is Superman himself is a person. He needs somebody to save him to. He needs somebody to encourage him to. He can't just do it on his own. So, and remember, he's a person. So he had his mom to encourage him, mom to bounce off ideas off of. He had Lois Lane to confide in, closer to Lois than even his mom to some degree, because he shared the apartment and all of that. So you get the understanding that Superman also needed somebody, some superhero, somebody at least to confide in, to get his, get things sorted out in his mind. He knew what his purpose was, but again, you saw in the middle of BVS him talking about, he's doubtful about him being able to inspire people with hope to the extent where the earth could be saved by him. It seems as though bad things seem to be happening the more he tries to help. So he was somewhat trying to process that. Now, some people say, well, Superman was unsure of himself and stuff. Well, human beings are unsure of themselves at times. So at times we have to question things. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Did he lose hope? Did Superman lose hope? No, he didn't lose hope, but he was more or less at that point in time, again, a contemplative person, I'm sure, thinking about what was the point of what he was doing if things were getting worse. This is what he was worried about. He seemed to be seeing a cycle of controversies and a cycle of problems, and it seems as though it was just getting more and more problematic the more he tried to intervene and help. So when he was bouncing the idea off of Lois Lane, he was thinking from a much broader picture. He wasn't studying that people were setting him up, people were behind what was happening to him. No, he was more interested in the fact that how effective was he being? And this was the same question that Batman had. Batman was having that problem himself. Batman had the problem that he'd been working for 20 years in Gotham, still had, every time you get rid of some criminals and put them behind bars or whatever, more criminals would pop out of nowhere. And so it seemed like a cycle of endless trying to fight down crime that didn't seem to be going away. So he himself was questioning, in the movie, what was he doing? So you had Superman questioning what he was doing. You had Batman questioning what he was doing. And so that was the kind of movie that we had. And again, nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with introspectively questioning what's happening. Jesus questioned before he went up on the cross, was talking to his father, saying, if it's possible, take this cup from me, right? But nevertheless, not my will. So it's nothing wrong with questioning something. In fact, that helps you to process it and bring some clarity. That's why Superman had to go on his own. He had to be by himself to try and resolve the situation, right? And again, people will say, well, that's emo Superman, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, that's life. That's real stuff. Deborah Snyder said it. We didn't see that this movie as dark. We saw it as realistic. We saw it as that's what life is. Sometimes you have to take moments in critical times in your life. You have to sit down and you have to question things and you have to work out situations, right? And that's what Superman did. He took some time out. He went off into a place that was very, very isolated, and he was trying to work the situation out in his head, okay? And he came to the conclusion that one of the greatest motivating forces was the fact that all he was doing was worth the while because somebody believed in him. So that even if the outcome didn't work out the way how the outcome was supposed to work out, there were people who actually believed, in spite of that outcome, that he was there to do some good, and it was inspiring them. So that's why he went on with it. That whole story about the horses and the flood and all of that and stuff was to say, hey, regardless of the outcome, there are going to be people who still believe in you, and they're going to try and push you in the direction so that it continues to be ultimately in the end a good outcome. And that's real talk. How many of you have family members or friends or somebody in your life who believes in your potential? Those are the people, sometimes they come at the right time, especially, to inject into your life that extra boost that you need to go on. And that's exactly what Zack Snyder was able to pinpoint in the human experience of Superman and in the human experience of ourselves. Not to hate on any other Superman, because I'm a Superman fan. I'm not just a fan of Henry Cavill's Superman. I can see in each Superman the potential and even very positive points. So I'm not exclusive to Henry Cavill's Superman. I appreciate almost every iteration of Superman I've seen on the screen, even though I don't necessarily agree with the movie that the Superman might be in. For example, Brandon Routh's Superman is Superman. Tyler Loechlin's Superman is Superman. Christopher Reeve's Superman is Superman. Okay, George Reeves' Superman is Superman. I'm not debating that. I am just saying that what Zack Snyder was doing with Superman and is still doing with Superman is actually like if Superman was telling his own story. And sometimes other people chime in and they give their point of view of how Superman might be. But I think, by and large, if you look at the three movies that have gone with that Zack Snyder, his version of the three movies, I must say, brings some clarity to it. And I'm talking about Justice League 2017 is not his version. Okay, the BVS theatrical is still his version, but it's not his complete vision. His complete vision is the ultimate cut, in my opinion. So if you look at Man of Steel, then you look at the ultimate cut of BVS, and then you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League, you will see a progression. The story and the narrator changes for different films, kind of like what James Cameron was talking about for Avatar. But suffice it to say Once we're seeing things from Superman's perspective, that is what makes it interesting. So we say we wish we could be these people. But there's a reason God didn't let us be those people. There's a reason why every man has to walk his own walk and walk his own lane. Because there's some things those people have to take on that you just can't take on. And I think that's what Zach was painting the picture with Superman. Because when all the dust settles and everything is said and done, and we see Superman fly off, to rescue people in the sunset, what we will remember is not all those hardships and difficulties he faced, but we will remember all the good things he's done, which is ironic because a lot of times we do not respect how much difficulty, trials, and tribulations people have to go through to be where they are at, and how long the process takes for them to get where they are at. We look at them and we think, oh, wow, they just popped out of nowhere. No, they didn't just pop out of nowhere, just like our Superman. Oh, wow, Superman just popped out of nowhere and he's helping these people. No, he didn't just pop out of nowhere. You get what I'm saying? And so I believe that a lot of times we identify with the success of certain characters. We like positive outcomes. You know what I loved about BVS the most? BVS is a movie that allows us to see a hero die for what he believes in. He dies for what he believes in. Because guess what? Heroes can die. And it wasn't one of those Hollywood, kind of stuff. No. Nobody expected Superman to die in that movie. And he died. And the thing about it is he had went through so much. And after all of that, he still persevered in trying to do good. And he died for it. He died for it. And it's a tragic story. And sometimes, and a lot of times, what a lot of people don't realize, I look at Michael Jackson, for example, his death. I look at some of our, what we call our superheroes or superstars, right? We look at people like great entertainers who just suddenly died, right? You talk about great entertainer like Heath Ledger, suddenly died, right? Just at the peak of, it seems as though his success was going up and up and up like a star, and then boom, he's gone, right? And I say to you guys this. I say, we don't know Heath Ledger. We know some of the portrayals of things he's done as an actor, but we don't know his personal life. We don't know the personal life of Michael Jackson. There were all kinds of allegations and controversies around him, but ultimately in the end, we didn't know him unless we met him and we grew up around him. We wouldn't know him, right? So for us, from the outside watching in, oh, wow, he was doing so good. He had all this stone and just suddenly died. Heath Ledger, he was just doing so well and then he suddenly died. You know what I'm saying? Superman, the whole world, controversial, kind of controversial, making news and stuff, and then suddenly he dies. You know what I'm saying? Point being, if you're looking from the outside inside, like some of these people are speaking, they're speaking from their perspective. You, second movie, Superman's dead. You kill off Superman in the second movie. Okay. That's because you're looking at it from the outside in. You're not looking at it from a personal perspective, Superman's perspective. And from Superman's perspective, as the story tells us, Superman chose to sacrifice. He knew what the stakes were. He knew what could happen. He knew how weak he was. But Superman chose, and that's a good person. That person chose not the safety, not hanging back. No, he chose to participate in saving lives. And that's the thing that ultimately crystallized Superman. And that's what made that movie BVS so wonderful, because it wasn't about the outcome. It wasn't about the praise and adulation. Superman wasn't doing it for that reason. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do. We saw him at the end of Man of Steel, similar endings, do something that some people considered controversial. If I was Superman, I would never, break Zod's neck. No, he had to break Zod's neck. That was the right thing to do. The hard part about it was going against everything in his body, going against his desire to save people. Superman's whole MO is saving people. He's not into killing people. He's not into destroying. He's into saving. That's what Superman does. So this was against everything that he believed he was. He knew this was the right thing to do, and he did it because it was the right thing to do, but it wasn't something that was natural to him to kill people, right? That's not natural to Superman. You know, Wonder Woman doesn't have a problem with it. It's not natural to her either, but she doesn't have a problem with it. And Batman, he'll do it as a very, very, very last option, but he'll do it. Okay? Superman doesn't do that. That's not what Superman does. You didn't see Superman kill Steppenwolf. You didn't see Superman, he might break his horn off and stuff, but he's not going to kill Steppenwolf, right? But he did kill Doomsday. And he summoned up all the courage in him with his weakness and everything. He summoned it up and he knew this was what he had to do. Had to do it. And he did it. Okay? And in a way, what Zack was able to do was pull back that curtain of mythos and show you that outside of that hype, outside of the what's the word I'm looking for? Outside of the exaggerations, when you strip it all down, this is the person. And every person has their ups and downs, their emotional highs and lows. Everybody experiences. Once you're alive and you're a human being and you have emotions, you're going to experience that. Okay? And if you're saying that Superman is human like us and shares the same, then he's going to have it too. And in the comics, they show it as well. Superman has a lot more adventures in the comics because, you know, you can put out a comic book almost every month, you know, or annually, right? So there's a lots of comics in Superman, and he's had his lows, he's had his highs, he's abandoned mankind, just walked away from mankind. He's done all kinds of things. Superman's done a lot of things in the comics, right? Because once again, the comic book writers are exploring different aspects of Superman. Okay, so you have to understand that, you know, just because you have a certain perception of Superman doesn't mean that you can't have insight into Superman. Your perception of Superman is from a distance, just like how you perceive Beyonce, you perceive a superstar actor, you see the persona. But remember, while Superman is real in the sense that, let me explain what I mean. The real Kal-El is more Superman than he is Clark Kent because of his abilities. Superman is Clark Kent, basically. He behaves, he interacts with people the same way Clark Kent would, but he has these abilities. And because he doesn't wear glasses on, and he's got these tremendous abilities, and he doesn't interface with people for a very long time and have long relationships with them and go meet with them all the time as Superman, people don't get to know Superman enough to know that it's the same guy as Clark Kent. Because he swoops in, he comes, might say a couple things to some kids or whatever, have a nice little conversation, and swoop back out, right? That's it, Superman, right? Whereas Clark Kent is more interfacing with people and all of that stuff. And so people get to know Clark Kent a little bit more. But since he's a reporter and he's constantly doing investigative reporting, you know, they think of him as a reporter and that's it, right? Because people are like that. They categorize things, they put things in categories. They don't necessarily interrelate. Oh, this kind of relates with that. Nobody's looking for him. Let's put it that way. Nobody's looking for Superman to be Clark Kent or something like that. So nobody's really thinking Clark Kent's Superman. But ultimately, in the end, my point is this, and I'm going to wrap up. I got like less than a minute. My point is this, that seeing things, a lot of times we like to fantasize, hence fantasy. We like to fantasize about what would I do if I had $1 billion, or what if I had $1 million, or whatever. We like to fantasize. And because these things are called science fiction and it calls fantasy, people think that the characters don't necessarily have to be grounded in realism. But the best way to teach things is to ground it as much as possible in realism. I believe. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I think I have these things here. Let me see. Hold on one second. Now you can have magical, entertainment's entertainment. So you can have magical stuff like, Superman 1978. It doesn't have to be 100% grounded. It doesn't even have to be real. You could suspend reality and whatever, just once you tell a pretty good story, right? But what I'm saying is, if you really want to be didactic, if you really want to impart things and help people to relate with things, especially in this day and age where people are very narcissistic and they're very skeptical of a lot of things. You really want to be able to put something forward that's sincere, and it was something that they can say, oh, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. And so that the majority of people with Man of Steel, why they love Man of Steel so much, is because of that. That we're seeing things now from a different perspective. We're not seeing things from our perspective or how we deem Superman. No, we're seeing it from Superman's perspective, which I thought was very interesting. Somewhere here I have it. Hold on a second. I'm going to get it. Whoa. That's insane. Okay. I'm going to find it. It's here. Okay, where are we? All right, so just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of grounded reality, right? A History of Violence. Check out that movie. It's a really great movie, and it's one you will really be interested in seeing. Check out that. Check out also A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, V for Vendetta. All of these are fiction. Some of them are fantasy. Road to Perdition is cool. Joker, right? Joker's based on fantasy. It's a fictional character, right? Wonder Woman, very good. Not as grounded as Man of Steel, but grounded. And what I loved about that was at the end, again, Diana's perspective. We saw that Diana is saying that a hero can't save people. People have to be able to turn to the light or the light side of themselves. So she realizes the limitations of a hero. But what she can do, because she realizes love is the only thing that can change the world, what she can do is show love. People see that and want to emulate it. Yeah, so what I was saying is that, there are a number of movies for which, because they're so grounded and realistic, you can actually pull things from them, like Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises. Let's see what else we have here. Logan. A whole bunch of. You have The Punisher. You can pull things from these movies because they're kind of grounded. The Road to Perdition, V for Vendetta. All grounded, sort of grounded films. Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Batman v Superman, Joker, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises. These are all kind of grounded films. They're not stylized, but they're grounded films. So they have stylized films like Superman, Batman Returns. You have Watchmen. They're all stylized films. Then you have Constantine, which is more supernatural film, And yes, films can be comical, whatever, but I would say that the transformative nature of films is what is important. That when you go into the cinema and you see a film, you don't leave the cinema the same way you came in. That's really important to me. I'm going to catch you guys later. I am Disciple. I wish you guys a good night. God bless.